It's amazing what the chance of winning $1 million will do to people. 14 familiar faces once again come back to fight against Chris's pain and suffering and another chance to win it all. But with the promise of the challenges being the most dangerous and death-defying that they've ever been, which ones hold up to that standard? Hey guys, I'm Brad with Wicked Binge, and this is Total Drama All-Stars Challenges, least gruesome to most gruesome. Like previous entries, a challenge will be considered if it has a set of rules to be followed to complete it. Also, if there are multiple parts, all of them will be ranked together as one. Our gold medal for the least gruesome challenge is the Regatta Challenge. Following the announcement of the merge, the teens are tasked with completing one lap around Camp Wawanakwa via a boat. The sailing vessels vary in quality from a speedboat and a fishing boat to a dinghy and a raft. During their race around the island, Chef tries to sabotage the teens by throwing coconuts and dynamite. This challenge is only made harder by the fact that Maul decides to sabotage several of the boats.
Interesting!
Leaving 4 of the teens to share the raft as it is the only seaworthy option left. Following that is the Boxing Challenge. With each team going one player at a time, the teens must spin the Wheel of Misfortune and last up to 2 minutes on a boxing ring with whatever threat they land on. When Scott goes first, he ends up in the ring with a mutated shark named Fang, who'd been torturing him throughout the previous season. This caused the young man to freeze in terror and get annihilated.
That kid ain't right.
Sierra goes next, only to find out her opponent is the mother of the mutated rat she adopted in the previous episode, to which she loses the fight and her adopted creature. Duncan and Cameron question the chances of getting such personal opponents and begin to think the game is rigged, which we see that Chef has been intentionally rigging the opponents at Chris's request. While Chris allows for one match to be totally random to prove it's not being manipulated, he immediately continues it after the random matchup between Izzy and Maul. Though the challenge is said to have a touch of the phobia factor from Season 1, most of the matchups are not really fears but rather emotional frustrations, making it difficult for the teens to fight. Next is the Pirate Loot Challenge. The final 4 are tasked with bringing back a piece of valuable treasure to Chris in good condition. The last person to bring back their treasure, or anyone who comes back empty-handed, will be immediately eliminated. On top of that, the winner of the challenge gets to pick a second person to be eliminated as well, determining who goes with them to the finale. Each person has a different treasure to find. Zoe is to track down Sasquatch and Aqua, Gwen needs to recover an intact picture of Chris from his destroyed cottage, Scott has to retrieve a diamond guarded by Fang,
just show me where the diamond is.
And Mike has to find the long-lost Gilded Chris Award. Zoe and Gwen had little trouble in finding their treasures, while Scott struggled fighting Fang. Mike's treasure was seemingly the hardest to find as Chris had no knowledge of where the statue would be, whereas the rest of the treasures could be found in general areas of the island. A scavenger hunt isn't too difficult, but Maul's sabotage definitely made the task harder than they should be. The Cliff Diving Challenge comes next. For the first challenge of the season, one player from each team has to cliff dive into the shark-infested waters to locate a key. Once a key is retrieved, the diver has to be pushed in a baby carriage by another team member to the spa hotel to see if it unlocks. If not, the duos have to race back to the beach before another player can take a chance.
Let's roll!
Whoever unlocks the spa hotel wins the challenge. The most difficult part is obviously the diving from a crazy height into shark-infested waters. But as the teens have dealt with sharks before, it's not as intense as it could be. Next is the Night Challenge. On the night of the Blue Harvest Moon, the teams are tasked with racing from one side of the island to the other, and whoever's entire team crosses the finish line wins.
A Blue Harvest Moon? How fortuitous.
Chris warns the teens that the phenomena will cause the animals to behave strangely, as an added challenge to the task. Having won the previous challenge, the villainous vultures are given a map, whereas the heroic hamsters are required to wear bacon hats and sausage tails. During the challenge, it's discovered that the Blue Harvest Moon causes the animals to behave as their opposite. For example, peaceful birds become deadly, and dangerous crocodiles act like friendly dogs. Other than the animals acting their opposite and wearing the meat clothing, there doesn't prove to be much threatening the challenge. After that is the Leech Ball Challenge. The teens are tasked with having a paintball battle, but with a twist, using leeches as ammo. Chris tells the teams that the weapons are first come, first serve, as the good weapons are paintball guns and a cannon, versus regular slingshots. Once retrieved, the team who scores 6 most points wins the challenge. As painful as leeches can be, the teens for the most part do a pretty good job of avoiding being shot at, especially the heroes evading the barrages of leeches from the villains. Using the cannon has the potential of hitting multiple people, but it also causes whoever's using it to essentially be a sitting duck, as it's very heavy and difficult to move.
Okay, then we should split up.
The worst part of the challenge is potentially getting hit with the leech or even several, like Sam did. Next is the Buried Treasure Challenge. Teams are challenged to find 7 3D printed puzzle pieces underneath the sand on their side of the beach to recreate a sculpture of a landmark visited during World Tour. As the villainous vultures had won the previous challenge, they got the advantage of digging with shovels.
Hurry up! I have dinner planned!
However, Chris warns that there's a pitfall filled with crabs around their building platform, and there are several booby traps hidden within the sand. The booby traps range in severity from water geysers and emerging platforms to bee swarms and garbage explosions. The Ice Cream Sundae Challenge is next. In this challenge, the final 5 must make ice cream sundaes from Chris's malnourished interns by collecting the ingredients from various parts of the island. The ice cream can be found atop a snowy mountain, the cherries are in the middle of a swamp, the nuts are guarded by a robot in the main lodge,
Watch out for the robot!
and the chocolate sauce is surrounding a fire-breathing plant. Whoever's sundae is consumed to completion first is the winner. The treks to these locations are dangerous. Retrieving the ice cream means risking a fall off the mountain, players run the risk of running into an alligator and getting the cherry, and having to avoid the robot when grabbing the nuts. The fire-breathing flower is pretty self-explanatory. When the teens arrive with their sundaes, Chris changes the challenge and forces them to eat the sundaes they created, and whoever finishes first wins. This is a decent flip to the challenge, with the exception of Courtney, who allowed for a bird to vomit on her sundae that she was willing to give to the starving interns. In turn, she's punished, with not being allowed to eat anything else until her sundae's finished. After that is the Obstacle Course Challenge. Inspired by Chef Hatchett's boot camp from the first season, the teens have to make their way through a brutal obstacle course. First, they must navigate a field of booby-trapped tires, and then climb a rope wall, with some of the rope options being more reliable than others. Then they must cross a set of monkey bars over a pond full of snapping turtles. Finally, they must navigate the duck in cover zone, where they have to avoid being shot by Chef's Leech Ball gun. After Scott remarks that it sounds easy, Chris decides to give all the teens a heavy backpack to wear throughout the obstacle course.
This is gonna be awesome!
Should they abandon the backpack, they will face a penalty at the end, which is revealed that the packs contain the necessary equipment to zip line to the finish. Chris makes no mistake when he said that this challenge would be much more herdy than Chef's boot camp. Next is the Pancakes Challenge. The teams have to complete a giant proportion of pancakes as fast as possible. Players must go one by one, eating as much as they can until their team's siren goes off. Then they must navigate an obstacle course from the previous season without vomiting. Scott remarks that the challenge sounds easy, prompting Chris to add in an untested element called the salad spinner.
Bring it in!
If anyone vomits at any point, they must sit out the rest of the challenge. Whichever team finishes their pancakes and completes the obstacle course one final time wins. Attempting to traverse a tedious obstacle course on a full stomach is definitely a difficult task, but it's made even harder by the fact that Chris booby-trapped the pancakes as well. They run the risk of animals, bombs, and mousetraps going off while eating. The bronze medal of gruesomeness goes to the Rescue Challenge. During a video message to the teens celebrating the 100th episode of the Total Drama series, Chris is unexpectedly attacked and captured by a feral Ezekiel. Chef then immediately tasks the teens with finding Chris as their new challenge, telling them that without Chris, there's no show and no $1 million. After bargaining with Chef for a better reward once Chris is found, the teens decide to go investigate the mine, as that was Zeke's home in the previous season. During the time that Chris is captured, Ezekiel has him suspended upside down over a vat of toxic waste. Chris initially tries to sweet-talk the feral teen into letting him go, but then infuriates him by listing all the injustices that had been done to the former homeschooler to find out why the teen was so mad. This then causes Zeke to grab a pair of rats to chew up the rope keeping Chris out of the toxic vat. While searching for Chris, the teens run the risk of falling further into the cave from various heights, as well as potentially getting nabbed by Ezekiel. When Cameron, Chef, and Gwen make their way to Zeke's lair, the feral teen is able to take Chef's bazooka and blast him with it before acid spitting the ceiling and causing it to cave in. Gwen is eventually able to retrieve the bazooka and blast Ezekiel, allowing her to rescue everyone and get out.
Could have been a little more more gentle?
We'll never know what the intended original challenge was, outside of Chris's note of hoping the teens aren't allergic to various items, but it sounds like it might have been less arduous than the rescue the teens had to initiate. The silver medal of gruesomeness goes to the Fun Zone Challenge. Under the guise of the producers requesting that the teens get a well-deserved break, Chris tricks them into entering the Fun Zone, a sealed-off area of the island that houses all the mutant creatures from the previous season. Teams are challenged with retrieving 6 eggs and bringing them back to their team's basket. Anything that hatches from the eggs and stays in the basket still counts.
Aww, it thinks I'm its mommy.
And whichever team reaches 6 eggs first wins. Going up against the mutants from the last challenge in an unclosed environment proves to be fairly difficult for the teens. However, some of the creatures can be outsmarted or outran, so for this reason, we have to keep it out of the top spot. The gold medal of gruesomeness goes to the final challenge. Before beginning the challenge, the final 2 must each choose a weapon and shoot down 2 balloons to reveal which 2 previously eliminated contestants will be helping them. With the helpers in tow, the final 2 are tasked with scaling a 4-tier moat to reach the top, with a safety zone at the end of each moat. The first moat consists of toxic waste, the second moat has lava, and the third has swamp water infested by Fang. In the final level, they have to avoid Chef as the Mad King, and they must pull a sword out of a stone to determine who wins.
Will anyone survive the final challenge?
Chris gets fed up with an emotional moment that transpires and decides to make the finale a free-for-all for more action to occur, forcing the teens to cross dangerous substances as well as leaving the rest of the eliminated teens and the balloons to fly away shows how psychotic he is when it comes to torturing kids. Alright guys, that's it. That wraps up our list of the challenges from least gruesome to most gruesome. Which challenge do you think was the most difficult to complete? Let us know in the comments below. And as always, stay wicked.